Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second: surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? History were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn they're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of men on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
Welcome back to the Logbook podcast. I am Kim, and this is...
I am Dakota.
Before we begin, we'd like to thank our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight. And also, we'd like to thank some of our hosts, which is Common Denominator Network.
You should really check them out. They have some really great shows, and you can check them out at Facebook and at Rumble as well.
We'd also like to thank our good friends at American Veteran Roofing and Restoration. Guys, if you live in the Houston area and the North Texas area, please consider using a veteran-owned business that gives quality. You can check him out at American Veteran Roofing and Restoration on Facebook. And also you can contact him at 832-476-2011 and at the ticker below. So tonight we have a very special guest, but before we move into that, we have
VA convoluted news, because veterans never get straight answers, do they?
Well, today, the Veteran Affairs Administration this week tried to, Dakota, join a town hall. And it was very interesting. A lot of veterans showed up to get their voices heard. But unfortunately, the cue cards were back. And everyone knows what those cue cards mean, don't they, Dakota?
Cherry picking sons of... Never mind. All right. So when you get there, they just say, oh, yeah, sure, come to this town. Your voice is heard. They said, well, you got to fill out this cue card, and then we can vet your questions, and we can only answer the easy ones that we want to put out there.
And the ones that they're prepared for, or the ones that, hey, they know in the audience, which is very, very sad. I did get my question asked, but I felt very taken advantage of because I did know the people that organized that event. The ones here in Houston. However, some other charities were not as obliging as well as us at the Logbook. So it was a very...
It was a show. We'll say that. It was a
And-
show.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I would like to shout out to Veteran for Veterans, who also felt our frustration as the VA continued to downright lie about even the questions that were asked. And I believe there were only 2 questions at a town hall asked of the VA.
I tell you, if you like drama, telenovelas got nothing on a Veterans Town Hall hosted by Veterans Affairs. No one's got that. Moving on. Mask mandates were lifted after ordered to do so after 1 month after Morgan Luttrell
And the House Committee of
Affairs
put it out.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the directors of Veterans Affairs were under the guise that if the COVID pandemic levels were high. However, here in the city of Houston, we checked the website and they were low to moderate. Look at that. Just proving that this whole COVID-19 scandal was just a scandal.
It's a sham.
To begin with.
It's a sham, and the VA is taking full advantage of it. Just another thing that you have to do to get in. It's ridiculous.
The Department of Veteran Affairs say a bipartisan bill will lift the pay cap of VA doctors. What are your thoughts on that?
Why?
Well, I can honestly see. I do not believe
we can't get in to see the doctors, so why do they need to get paid more?
Well, I honestly can see that it would create a reward system. If the doctors perform better, they could actually make more money. Just proving that socialist medicine really doesn't work at all, because it totally enslaved our doctors. And however, the bad ones could get even more, I would say, of a reprimand. However, I do not believe this is a bipartisan anything, because it comes from Senator John Tester's office.
Now, are these be getting their pay raised by merit, or is it just by time and service?
See, that's my problem. I believe that the way it works, in my opinion, is that it will be based on politics, not performance. That's my questions on these bills. The Department of Veteran Affairs is modernizing its central electronic healthcare record. And if you've been paying attention to the subcommittees of Veteran Affairs lately, it has been a real issue because it's promoted theft of our medical records and sensitive information. But do you believe they will actually get it right, Dakota?
No, they won't. Because the thing is, in order to modernize something, it has to work first.
And let's face it, the VA hasn't worked pretty much since the creation of the department.
It's like VA is like a man in a midlife crisis with that Corvette that just won't, just like, if I get this part, I'll finally run. No, it won't. No, it won't.
Moving on.
In November of 2021, Congress passed the Veterans Affairs Transparency and Trust Act of 2021. Facilitate oversight of VA spending, 19 emergency relief fund.
The VA did not provide sufficient supporting documentation requested by the Government Accountability Office team to assist the line level details needed to make a full assessment. Although OIG did not make recommendations in the report, there are 2 unimplemented recommendations from March 2020 to OIG.
So the VA is withholding documents? So business as usual, right?
Yeah. The Transparency Act funds that could interfere with VA's long-term compliance with the act if it is not addressed. The thing is that they're showing these reports, but yet again, there's no accountability on it, and they're never releasing the full information, as we have seen, and how we will see in this next document, which is from the Government Accountability Office, identifying gaps in the comprehensiveness of data use.
This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So after all this oversight that's going on, I'm trying to get the words out here, but all this oversight that we're seeing, and the VA is still running the same way it's
They're-
always been.
When you watch these community hearings, it's just a lot of pandering. An example of veterans' access to community care. I remember Mike Bost came out and said, hey, there's even empty buildings. I wonder where he got that, by the way. VA reviewed data estimating whether non-VA providers have the capacity to serve veterans. They don't. 1,600 of them are unlicensed. VA lacked data on appointment wait times. Again,
Didn't have it.
CVA, Concerned Veterans for America, uncovered the patient indication date, which is pretty much the standard of how the VA runs to hide the actual wait times. It's a perceived date. VA intends to address data gaps as a part of ongoing planning for the next sets of quadrennial market assessment expected in 3 years. So basically, they'll let us know in 3 years past the statute of limitation date.
So in the meantime, we're going to still keep waiting and dying.
Well, it's a statute of limitation date to where we would be able to sue. So I suggest some veterans get a hold of this because this is a complete breach of Mission Act.
Yeah, it's just like when you're in the military, it's hurry up and wait. And when you become a veteran, it's hurry up and die.
But as malpractice lawsuits have an expiration of 2.5 years. So, of course, let's go ahead and get these numbers of the patient waiting times 3 years later. That way we can cover our butts.
Oh, yeah, we did do that. I guess you can follow your loss. Sorry.
So now that was actually, we've read that government accountability report, but however, it did just make it onto Fox News recently.
Yeah, the
Way to catch up, media.
way to catch up. Gold star.
And military news.
9 U.S. soldiers died late Wednesday after 2 Fort Campbell Black Hawk helicopters crashed in Kentucky. The 101st Airborne Division of Black Hawks crashed in Trigg at 10 p.m. during a routine training mission. Navy confirmed troops on board the 2 aircraft died as a result of the crash.
All of them. Our hearts are with the families as victims. So the U.S. Army tries to reinvent recruiting. I wonder what's going on there. After falling short on its goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so apparently this new woke recruiting that the all-encompassing military has brought in is not working out so well.
Absolutely. So I wonder how they're going to change this to still keep the woke and maybe just a title change. You know that.
It's going to be a title change. You're no longer a recruit. You're a trans service member. That's what it is.
Gosh, I could think of so many things that could go wrong with it, but yet it just sounds so wrong.
Your transition from civilian to active duty, yes.
Millions of servicemen and answered in Iraq willingly and without question. And we did so without ever knowing a definitive end to our service. Marquez told reporters outside the Capitol on March 16th. However, our force is not built to remain in an actual state of war. Lawmakers took to their first real steps in addressing that this week. The Senate voted 66 to 30 on Wednesday to repeal the authorization for use of military force it gave to former President George W. Bush 20 years ago to invade Iraq.
20 years to repeal that. 20 years. That's insane. And only 66 out of 30. Yes, that's a huge majority. But there are 4 people that remain silent. And I think whoever those senators are, their constituents need to find them out.
And just, again, proving that maybe military issues aren't necessarily a priority. March 29th, 2023 marked the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon. So yesterday was actually the Vietnam War Veterans Day, by the way. We celebrated here in the city of Houston by virtue signaling.
Yes, that's
because the veterans had to walk to their own ceremony while the city of Houston staff got the VIP parking.
yes. Let's organize an event for veterans and then make these disabled veterans walk 2 miles. Oh no.
Uphill
Uphill.
in the snow.
Both ways.
And down
There's no
both
snow.
ways.
There's no snow in Houston.
It's the pollening.
It's the pollen, the yellow snow.
But
of Houston, yes.
Here's the thing, not to say that our veterans are completely without stamina or courage, because also the same day, a 64-year-old veteran in a wheelchair stopped a would-be robber here in Houston.
That's how you celebrate Vietnam Veterans Day. That's how you do it. You know, you think he sat down and shot. He had a rest and everything. It was easy for him to do that. You know, when you shoot somebody in a wheelchair, your target gets further and further away because the wheelchair keeps kicking back further.
Well done to that veteran.
Yes, well done indeed.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin became very frustrated this week in a round of hearings. It was glorious. I suggest y'all go watch those hearings. On the Senate Armed Forces Committee, criticized him for his leftist propaganda and woke training. We will keep you updated on that. We are currently reviewing those in interviews, and we'll be posting them here on Facebook shortly. But I will say this, Morgan Luttrell was absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
And I think we have
ripped into him. Yes, we do.
Trail for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Yesterday at 3 o'clock at Arlington National Cemetery, I put one of my teammates in the ground that was killed on a tragic parachuting accident during training. And at 4:30, I received a phone call that Senior Chief Mike Day, who was shot 27 times while on combat operations, took his own life yesterday. So all I ask is that you continue to, which I know you will, cherish our service members and our veterans and focus on the mental health aspect after these two wars. Secretary Austin, you said ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups continue to threaten the security of the United States and our citizens and our partners. Do you consider the cartel to be a terrorist group?
I consider them to be transnational criminal organizations.
Transnational criminal.
Regardless of vernacular, sir, that would.
That's what we're calling
That's
them.
the
now.
same thing, in my opinion. Is it not yours?
Yeah, we're domestic terrorists.
Well, it's a,
DVE.
again, this
I
is,
believe is what he
it's,
said.
Yeah.
they are criminal organizations. So,
Mr. Milley, thank you for your distinguished career, sir. And over your tenure in the military and your multiple commands, if you lost 50,000 troops in one deployment, would you be relieved of duty?
Yeah, I would imagine if I lost 50,000 troops
Yeah.
in a single battle or deployment, I don't know if I'd be relieved. It depends on the nature of the war. You know, there were 2,000 killed at Normandy. My dad hit the beach at Iwo Jima, 7,000 killed there. So I guess it depends on the nature of the war. But 50,000
One of our
is a lot.
deployments, not
Yeah,
initial invasion.
one of ours, sure. Yeah.
Okay. If you had 2,500 enemy combatants move through your front lines and take over your interior, would you be relieved of duty?
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah, I would think so.
If you were a commanding officer and you were not enforcing the ROEs or the SOFA that was in place by the leadership, would you be relieved of duty?
I would imagine that if I did not enforce the ROEs, yeah, I'd probably be relieved. I would imagine, sure.
If you were a commanding officer and individuals were coming into your AO and kidnapping your troops, would you be relieved of duty if you didn't do anything about it?
If I knew about it and didn't do anything about it, sure.
I know that.
100,000 Americans die each year from fentanyl. 5,000 illegal aliens come across this border every day. Sex trafficking, kidnapping, drugs, gangs. In your professional opinion, do you think Secretary Mayorkas is doing a job at all with securing our border south and north?
Yeah, it'd be inappropriate for me, as a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, from a legal basis, to actually make comments about cabinet members. That's actually in the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Okay,
so
sir.
You got to respect that. But here's what I would say. There's a significant crisis at the border. I've mentioned it a couple of times.
Yes, sir.
5,000.
That's why I shifted to this line of questioning.
35,000 a week. That's a core. You've got about 1 million or so. Now, most of them, realistically, most of them are economic migrants, and they're fleeing violence and so on and so forth. But not all of them. Some of them are not. Some of them are bad. Who knows where they're coming from and what their intent is. So that border crisis is very serious, and it's having a very negative effect on our society in general, and obviously the border states, but well beyond the border states. The fentanyl crisis is compounding that. Now, the question is, what do we do, and how do we get about that? And that is a very complicated area, as you know. I think you have to obviously start right at the border, but there's obviously some things deeper into the so-called battlefield, if you want to call it that, in Mexico, Central America, et cetera, getting at some of the root causes. We have to work with the host nation governments. Talked to Congressman Waltz a little earlier. We've got to get a handle on this and get a handle on it quickly. This is being very, very destructive to our society as a whole. And I am absolutely agree with that for problem identification. The issue is, what do we do about it and how do we do it? There are certain skills and capabilities that can help, but the lead has got to be law enforcement.
I think the leadership itself, sir, translates nicely from military to civilian. And fortunately, on this side, as you soon, I'm assuming you will soon, and I'm a border state.
Sure.
And it's my people in my district that are dying.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly believe that the Secretary is skirting his fiduciary responsibilities to save the lives as we would if we were combatant commanders in any given AO.
Sure.
But I appreciate your position and how you have to answer that question. Thank you.
I do want to say my thoughts and prayers are with your two fallen comrades. I'm surrounded by SEALs in my office.
I see one sitting behind you. You're in good shape.
And I appreciate your personal service and that of your brothers as well.
Thanks, sir. Mr. McCord?
I second that.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Mr. McCord, I have nothing for you today.
Gentlemen's time's
Our hearts go out to or rather to the ones we lost.
Yeah.
That's really bothers me. However, I will have to bring up that Lloyd Austin, his suicide prevention program, is still very woke. It is nothing but a gun grab, because he believes to stop suicide in a proposed release last month is that he wants to raise the gun age ownership to active duty personnel to the age of 25, and then have a list of all active duty, possibly DOD personnel who own firearms. If mental health really was your concern, Lloyd Austin, you would not sit here and hold active duty or veteran service records, medical records hostage for a gun grab.
Yeah. There's guns have nothing to do with the suicide epidemic that we're seeing in our country today. You know, if a person is in a mental state of where they're wanting to harm themselves or even kill themselves, and you just take a gun away from them, they're just going to find another way to do it.
And of course, pay attention to the messages that the veteran community is sending. People who die of suicide with mental issues usually die at home. Why are they dying in front of the VA? Answer that question. I think it's clearly sending a message to the government that it's the VA causing suicide. Also, onto the border crisis, I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Your own general was contradicting the Secretary of Defense. But that brings us over to our special guest that we have is the widow of an active duty service member, Sergeant Jeremy J. Seals, and we have his widow tonight, Miss Tori Seals. Hello, Miss Tori. How are you doing?
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Well,
surviving.
Yeah, I get it. I would sit there and say that I would never want to experience what you're going through, especially the fact that our service members go to serve, and then when it comes to actual health care, they're not getting what they need to survive.
Our deepest condolences.
Thank you.
Just no other words that we can have for you. But thank you for being here with us today and answering some questions for us.
I can actually consider it pretty good luck too, because my best friend, who is a Marine, her name was Tori. So
yeah, she's spelled the same way too.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Yeah, it was odd. Jay was assigned to strike instead of Rakkasans. So the first group spouse thing I went to at Fort Campbell, everybody was like, Tori, your husband should be with the Rakkasans. It's like, nope, I'm good. Well, he's great with strike. Thank you.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I am working with an organization called Veteran Warriors.
Okay.
I'm under their umbrella right now, and they basically have given me carte blanche to speak however I feel is needed,
Yeah,
which is a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, in a true situation like this, freedom of speech should be upheld
Yes,
to a full extent.
absolutely, and it's a great organization to let you do that, and those are few and far between, because there's so many of them out there that want to have you say, okay, well, we want you to say this, but not this. We want to keep this part, highlight this part of your story, but not this part of your story, and it's very hard finding an organization
Right.
that'll do that.
We work with an organization that pretty much just lets me do what I want to.
Yeah,
But you understand the freedom of that to be able to speak up is very important. Now, the one set of rules that I have for Voice of Our Warriors and for Veteran Warriors is we are completely bipartisan.
That's what how with the organization that I volunteer with works too, because it is veteran healthcare and veterans in general is a bipartisan issue because they send us both to fight. Both of them do.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it just a one-sided issue? And I've actually found that conservatives they don't listen as well as they say they do.
No, they don't. They're sometimes more than
No
all.
comment.
Yeah, worse than the Democrats, worse than the left.
And I guess it is in location here too, because it's all frustrating. But I do believe this is that everyone is completely overwhelmed with what it's going on, and it's just to sit there.
We've got everything from what's going on with the VA, what's going on with the DoD. You've got military medical malpractice. You've got the SBP and DIC and all of the widows issues. And you've got all of this, and it's all federal, bipartisan, bicameral issues.
Yeah, like caregivers too. That's a big one.
Yes. Veteran Warriors, the rest of the team focuses on caregiver, and they were actually the organization that got a Supreme Court hearing on, I believe, don't quote me on that because that's not my side of the house, but they got a Supreme Court hearing about the caregiver program and the changes that the VA pushed through in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So
and I've seen a lot of work with that, but I also noticed in there was a hearing, within a month's time talking about the caregivers and the fallacies again with that. Mm-hmm. So it's still ongoing, still something that needs to be addressed. But I was wondering if you could share your story with us.
Okay. So Jay and I met in high school, but we didn't date then. We were just really good friends. He was the one friend I could go talk to about the boys that I was dating, and he could come talk to me about the girls that he was trying to date. And I would give him helpful hints of, no, don't say that. Oh God, you look like a geek. Don't do that. That was my job. Then life happened. I went one direction. He moved to Tennessee. I stayed in Texas. We tried to stay in contact, but he had an ex-girlfriend that was psycho. And I just kind of went, I don't have time for this. Call me when you're done with this. I'll still be your friend, but call me on the other side of this. And then I didn't hear from him for 13 years. Well, a mutual friend of ours came to me and she said, where is Jay? What's going on with him? And it's like, I don't know. I'll find him. So I tracked him down. That was in 2005. We got married in 2006. He joined the Army in 2008. At the age of 34, he graduated basic training the same day he turned 35.
Oh, so he was in late enlistee like myself.
Mm-hmm. So,
oh yeah,
age waivers.
Mm-hmm. He didn't have an age waiver. That was really? Yeah. They were getting up to age 42 at that point.
Oh, in early 2000s, yeah. I understand.
Yeah, I remember that. We
Yeah.
had older people even in our, well, I was one of them. I was in my mid-20s though, but I'm going 2 years after your late husband did.
Mm-hmm. And I
So-
only had one guy in his 30s when I was in basic training. He was 32, but he had to get a waiver. And the only reason he got that waiver is because he was a lifeguard for the Olympics. So getting into the Navy, that kind of was like a shoe-in for him.
Well, Jay had done martial arts and soccer, and he had stayed in shape, and he didn't smoke, he didn't drink. He was my Jiminy Cricket. He was always the one that was straight laced. You can't skip class today. You got tests. He was always the big blue schoolboy type. Always on point. In 2009, he got stationed at Fort Campbell, and me being me, I just went, okay, let's go. Packed up his stepkids, my 2 kids, and we went to Tennessee. We were there from 2009. He deployed in 2010, came home 2011, then went to Belgium for 2 years unaccompanied in 2011 also. He was home from Afghanistan for little less than 6 months and then was shipped to Belgium for 2 years unaccompanied. So we were definitely apart through this. Well, when he got to Belgium, he started having stomach problems. And he walked in, they thought it was a hernia. So he went for scans. Yes, you have a hernia, but there's something else here too. The only problem is they only treated and told him about the hernia. So in 2012, they treated his hernia. They filed documents in his records that said mass was found, follow-up is needed, in both English and French because he was in Belgium. Put it in his record, patted him on the head, and sent him on his merry way. He kept having stomach problems. He kept having, and they kept telling him, oh, it's just phantom pains. Oh, you're malingering. Oh, you're
in
just
your head.
trying,
Yeah.
you're just trying to get out of PT. You just don't want to. You just don't want to do the job. He was a computer geek. PT was no big deal for him, but yeah, he went to sick call. He went to the clinic, and they diagnosed him with irritable bowel syndrome. They diagnosed him with phantom whatever, and basically it's all in your head. Drink water, take some ibuprofen, and
Change yourself.
You can't, even if with stomach pain, you're not even supposed to take ibuprofen, especially if you have a stomach bleed.
I know.
Yeah.
You know this, I know this, but that was their answer to everything. In 2016, April of 2016, he was hospitalized with a bowel obstruction. The surgeon in charge of his case actually said to me, oh, sometimes bowel obstructions just happen.
No.
There's a reason for a bowel obstruction.
Yeah, there's something that's wrong. But because Jay was in the process of ETSing, this was April. He was supposed to get out in May. So it was, pat him on the head. They did a nasal gastric tube. They pumped everything that was in his system out through the tube. I apologize if that's a little graphic.
No.
But they pumped everything back out. Did scans and went, oh, look, there's no obstruction anymore. That's because there's nothing in there. Patted him on the head and said, find a private doctor when you get out.
Of course, because the thing is, after the paperwork to do a med board process, I get it.
and he had been hospitalized for 5 days. He was already on terminal leave. He was walking out the door when that happened. Well, part of what he was getting out to go National Guard. So he went to the National Guard. He signed in. He did all of the paperwork and even went on the month away. And then when he came back, he went to the VA, and the VA started doing tests. They started from head to toe, ear, nose, and throat guy. Then they sent him for a scan in September of 2016. And actually, it was a scope. I went with him because they were going to knock him out, and we didn't want him driving. I walk in, they say, okay, go get lunch. It's going to be a couple of hours, yada, 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 no big deal. Sent me down to the cafeteria at the VA at the Nashville location. I had just gotten down to the cafeteria and my phone rings. And they say, you need to come back up here now. It's like, what the hell? So I get back there, and normally when they call you back, when they've said it's going to be a couple of hours and they call you back within about 15, 20 minutes, that's not a good sign. Yeah. He was still unconscious when they told me he had cancer. They had scoped and found that it was they couldn't determine if it was gastric or esophageal because of where it was located. It was connected to both. So they could, and it was at a stage where they couldn't tell, and it had already broken through the stomach wall, and he had nodules of cancerous nodules throughout his abdomen at that point. So he went back to the National Guard, and the National Guard came through and did there is no way that from May till September, you went from perfectly healthy and perfectly fine to stage 4 stomach cancer. So they did what was referred to as a line of duty, an LOD. And they basically went to Big Army and went, all right, you screwed this one up. You got to take him back. And the assumption was he only had 3 to 6 months to live at that point. So that was September. By November, line of duty went through, and he was assigned to the, it's now called the Soldiers Recovery Unit. Back then, it was the Warrior Transition Battalion. We made it past all expectations. He survived 2 years. It was a good 2 years, but a hard 2 years at the same time. But thankfully, because he had that line of duty, I now receive the benefits of a widow, of an active duty widow.
Oh, thank you, God. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm so sorry.
Take a breath, honey. It's all okay. I have my cries all the time. He passed away on Halloween of 2018. So,
oh, sorry, it's that. I mean,
well,
I hear stories like this all the time, but it's just you're sitting here and then you just rallied your courage to come up and say, hey, I'm not done. I'm going to bring awareness to this situation. And that I'm totally blown away by that.
It's incredibly admirable what you're doing.
I'm
It really is. And,
when he died, I needed a mission. I was so mad, especially when we found the documents that said a mass had been found when it was 2 centimeters.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, it's 22 centimeters, the size of a potato.
Yeah.
A large baker potato at that. It had a Y shape to it. It was 22 centimeters long. And the fact that it had,
Just for reference, there's 30 centimeters in a foot. All right.
Yeah.
So you're 8 centimeters short of a foot long.
I can honestly say that I have experienced this in a way, is that they found abnormalities in my arm when I was active duty. And they kept a tumor in me for 7 years, and I had lost the use of my right arm.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
the gaslighting that I got, it's all in your head. You're you're just making it up. You're just trying to get more on your VA claim or things like that. And I'm like, no, I feel it. I'm in so much pain. And then I get it. And then once I saw the MRI, when I finally got Mission Act passed, and they got me to a professional, and I looked at it, it was the size of dang near a baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And all the mind games came out. Like, I told you, I knew it was true, and I don't trust anything the medical doctors say at all anymore after that.
I was so mad. And
Yeah,
he was my best friend.
of course.
He was my Jiminy Cricket. And part of the reason why, because we had 2 years to plan for his death, which is a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But I'm very thankful we had that 2 years, because in that 2 years, he actually came up with the name Voice of Our Warriors.
So he was, wait. So he was planning for you to have a mission
Yes,
in those 2 years?
because he knew if I didn't, they would find me. I would be one of those statistics. Had I not had I not taken on the mission, I would have been one of the statistics of the military widows that commit suicide.
Yeah,
And
and no one talks about that. And I am so glad that you're here bringing awareness.
So when Jay found out he had 3 to 6 months to live, after he made it past the three-month mark, we sat back and we had a lot of very difficult conversations. And I started doing research. That's how I was able to have a logical and rational conversation with his oncologist about toxic exposure in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That's how I was. We didn't get it officially diagnosed as toxic exposure, but Dr. Toole went through and pulled the genetic testing, which all came back negative. So there was no genetic component to his stomach cancer.
Yes, I understand that. So it's not in his passed down through his DNA and stuff like that.
Yeah, because that was one of the at that point in time in 2017, the VA was saying we can't cover toxic exposure cancers because they're probably all just genetic. No, they're not all genetic. And
Yeah, even President Trump said that, is that the VA should just cover it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he didn't take it that further. You know.
No, he didn't, and I was a little pissed off about that.
Oh, everyone was.
I got a list of things that I'm pissed off at politicians about.
Don't we all?
Both sides have bugged me.
Well, we actually do know the guys that are handling Brian Abergeary and Curtis Crawford. I mean, they were arrested last year in Tennessee, I believe.
Tennessee, yeah. They
for
weren't
standing up for the toxic exposure. It's we're very close with them, and they're going to be rallying next month to bring more awareness to it and the children of kids. So
It also
Can you
doesn't have
handle
an
it?
Agent Orange baby. So
Yes, because it not affects
that's
you
quite a
from
bit
what
too.
they said. It affects you, but up to the third generation is what they found. 'Cause I was actually 3 months old at Camp Lejeune. And I was actually given a letter when I was active duty saying, hey, you were exposed to uh, the toxic exposure at Camp Lejeune. And then I took my letter to my chief. He was like, you had no business joining the military. And I was just like, well, I didn't know. This is the first time hearing of it. They sent the letter to me. I thought I would just show you.
And it's not just Camp Lejeune, tons of military bases.
Yeah.
It's all over
No.
all. In fact, maybe like my dad was stationed at Port Hueneme when I was born, and we were on the base housing at Treasure Island for like the first 6 months of my life.
And I will say this: Trump did uncover the housing and everything, and there was toxic exposure, just mold and not upkeep or regular maintenance of that. So it's even with you being an Agent Orange baby, you and your stepchildren could possibly be exposed because of the base housing, even when you were in
We did
Tennessee.
not live on base.
Oh, thank God!
Thank God for that.
Oh,
Thank God.
Well, at the time, I had a teenage daughter, and well, she has my mentality. So, in order to protect the soldiers, I kept her off post.
Okay.
That's
I
That's
see that.
smart. That's
That is
real
very
smart.
smart.
I knew I could trust some of the soldiers, but not all of them. And
Oh, no.
she was
E4 and below, we're scumbags. I mean, I
Oh,
was,
yeah.
so I understand.
There it is, Mama Bear. You're
she's
Yeah.
protecting.
older now, but
Yeah,
she
protecting the
is
soldiers. Yeah.
she's all of 4'9" and 100 pounds, dripping wet, and has my temper and my attitude. So yeah, no.
Everyone knows this. I know it was a major thing in the military among females. It's the short ones that you got to be careful of.
Oh yeah, she would climb you like a rabid monkey if you pissed her off. Which is why I kept her off post.
Yeah, notice to protect the
Yeah.
soldiers. Of
Yes.
course.
I didn't have to worry about her being protected as much, although there were incidences and yeah. But she's grown out of that now.
Oh, good.
But yeah, Jay and I had a lot of those hard conversations, and we were driving back from Nashville at one point, and we were talking about, I need to create an advocacy grassroots thing. I've got to fight this. And he was like, okay, so what are you going to name it? I said, Sergeant. He went, no, nothing is getting named after me. He pulled the truck over to the side of the road and did the, nope, you're not naming it for me. You're not having any bills named for me. You're not having like, okay, honey.
It's about everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What a
Yes,
great
he didn't want to be remembered for that. He wanted to be remembered as a soldier. So, and as an author, and as a father, and as a computer geek, and Star Wars, Star Trek. Mine was Star Wars, his was Star Trek. One of the last trips he took before he died was to the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas to go meet all of his heroes. So yeah, he was a nerd.
The arguments in that household must have been hilarious.
Epic, actually.
Yeah,
Star
just-
Wars versus Star Trek.
Actually, we didn't argue about it. It was the, okay, well, I kind of like this, but I kind of like this. And we were an equal opportunity nerd household.
Oh, my husband here. He's a big Star Trek nerd.
Yeah.
We have like the 7 stages of Galron going on in every
6 degrees of Gowron.
And-
How
and-
everything in the Star Trek universe can
So you will understand this. The day before he died, I got him set up in his office, got him set up at his computer, and he did a 3D graphic design of a Defiant ship.
Oh
Oh
my
my God.
goodness.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm not even mad.
Hmm.
I'm not that nerdy, but that's cool.
So the last image I have is of this Defiant ship skipping off some form of an atmosphere and skipping off. And it's gorgeous. But that was his last post. That was his last image.
Wow.
And then I got him, he went, okay, I published it. I'm going to bed. So I had to go literally physically pick him up, put him in his wheelchair, move him to his bed, get him situated in the bed. And then the next morning I woke up to him screaming. So his passing was not peaceful.
Oh my goodness.
So that is part of what fuels me. Knowing the pain that he was, what should have been a peaceful transition. There towards the very end, it was a peaceful transition, but that was only because of morphine. He had gone from 182 pounds to 107 at 5'10", 5'11". I don't know if it would offend anyone, and I apologize if it does, but at the end, he looked like an Auschwitz patient or victim.
That malnourished. I don't think that's offensive. I don't
No.
think anyone would be offended by it.
No, it's
the reality.
it's detail like that people need to understand. Don't have detail like that. People become jaded, and people don't understand the pain that people suffer because of it.
That was 2 months before he died. Down this corner is when he was in Afghanistan. So that was at our wedding. So
I bet it was beautiful. Heck, we didn't even have a wedding. We had a courthouse.
Yeah, a courthouse wedding.
Yeah. But so after he passed away, you just rallied up, and what happened?
I got in contact with veteran warriors. Right about a year before he passed, I went to one of the first congressional hearings on burn pits.
Okay.
It was before he had passed, and I made sure that he was taken care of. And I went, "Hey, honey, I gotta go." And he went, "Please go, go." I think I was starting to helicopter way too much for him at that moment. But I went to DC and I met with Lauren Price, who was one of the founders of Veteran Warriors. She passed away from also toxic exposure related cancers. But at the time she was sitting in the gallery, and the little VA guy was talking about how they needed 4 to 6 more years of research before they could do a determination on if anything could be covered. And I'm in the gallery, and I had what Lauren referred to as my Tourette's moment. It just kind of fell out of my mouth that in 4 to 6 years, my husband will be dead. And I didn't realize quite how loud I had said it, but the front table, the front table turned and looked, and so did everybody on the panel. Yeah.
Good.
So I got to know Lauren really well on that trip, and she was like, "Oh, you have a mouth. Come with me." She grabbed hold of me, and I got to meet Holly and Steph and Lauren and her husband Jim, and a ton of Maria and Jesse and Dina and all of these people who had been fighting toxic exposure for so many years,
Yes.
but nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
Those that were active duty still had no clue. Word was not getting out yet. So
yeah, I can honestly say that I didn't know until I got the letter from Camp Lejeune.
Mhm.
And the thing is everyone, even in the active duty sphere, they wrote it off as it's duty. It's part of everything. And they kind of reset my mind to where it was like, okay, that's part of the service. And, coming out as a veteran, no, it's not. We have QA, we have safety briefs, we have safety standouts.
Mhm.
And you're telling me that, we still have to perform even at
Perform at full capacity even after you've been exposed to toxic materials.
Yeah, and it's our fault.
Yeah. Thing is, there's
and
all
knowing
these. Go ahead, please.
that you've got the PPE, personal protective equipment,
Right.
available, but it's always locked up in a Connex because a commander doesn't want to be financially responsible for all of those pieces of equipment.
Yes, I have so much to say on that.
He's
yes, so I was supplied when I was in the Navy. Okay, so locking up that PPE in Connex is one. I never did that. Pro, you got iPro. You need a respirator, you got a damn respirator. Okay, that there's no point in risking people's lives over money. The government spends tens or trillions of dollars every year on bullshit. Sorry, language, but yeah, and then you can't afford to keep the people who already decided to lay their lives on the line safe. There is actually programs for officers, or there's awards for officers who save money in active duty
and in combat
medals. They get full on medals on their chest and to reduce the budget. And they cut that budget wherever they can, whether it's PPE, whether it's materials, even our food gets.
I know it's actually rejected from
penitentiary. And it's because always the officers that are in charge of that, they are junior officers, so they have something to prove. And these junior officers, these even less, are just trying to look all good and innocent for the CEO and do their job and be effective at it so they can make rank and get a pat on the back. In the meantime, it's that system that is killing us in the long run because they're not spending money to keep us safe.
Well, that's part of it. There are so many different.
I know there's tons more, but the thing is, that is something that we can control.
Also, the 3M programs and safety programs and procedures, they're actually the ones that write it are some senators or elected official son or daughter. And that's absolute bull. And why aren't we going to the experts in these fields? It's ridiculous.
I think in some instances they are.
Yeah, yes, some are, but I saw it in this.
Okay, I have a little bit of a different perspective because I also worked for a defense contractor.
Okay.
I did IT for a defense contractor for a number of years. In fact, when Jay was in Afghanistan, I had contractors that actually they were subcontractors embedded in his unit.
Okay, that's cool.
Unfortunately, a mortar hit and took out my contractors. So, yeah. So I knew about the deaths or anything that was going on post before any of the other spouses and had to keep my mouth shut because I knew what was going on, but I couldn't tell anybody.
Yeah, that had to be very stressful. My goodness.
Oh yeah.
That's I'm really down to hear a different perspective because you learn new things all the time. That is so my goodness. No. So you're a civilian. You also worked in the for the military as a contractor. Then on top of that, your spouse and the situation you're going through, and now you're doing this. Someone give this woman a medal.
Oh,
Just
my
tell her.
father was 5th group.
Someone get her a beer for Christ's sake.
No, Scotch.
Yeah. Oh, I love you so much.
Or Irish whiskey. One of those. So, yeah, I've already promised myself some of the scotch that I bought 2 days ago when I'm done with this. That's my reward for not making a fool of myself.
So with all of this, I know you. It is a bipartisan issue, but do you have any legislation?
I do not. However, it's on the surviving spouse side of things. There are 2 bills. One's in the House, one's in the Senate.
Okay.
It's dealing with the DIC.
Okay.
I never say it right. Dependency and indemnity compensation. It's the DIC. It is the payment that VA gives to surviving spouses for their husband's back.
So I actually messaged you because I really didn't know about that. Because we're both mill to mill, and it's maybe something we should look into. Because we didn't think about that. We didn't even know about it.
Either of you is listed as permanent and total disabled, I think it's 10 years. You have to be for 10 years. Then
Next year.
Then the surviving spouse will qualify for DIC. I think.
Okay.
Don't
So
quote me on that one.
yeah, because we're coming up on that actually.
Mhm.
So what is it's dependency and what is it called?
Dependency and indemnity compensation. It's referred to as DIC. Here, let me read the official statement. Dependency and indemnity compensation, DIC, is a tax-free monetary benefit administered by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. DIC is paid to surviving spouses of service members who die in the line of duty while on active duty, veterans who die as a result of service-connected disability, or veterans who are rated 100% disability by the VA for 10 years or more. So if you die, if the veteran dies of a service-connected, then their surviving spouse receives DIC.
So what is the legislation for then? Is to this happen?
Okay.
Or?
So to explain the legislation, we get this payment and it is set right now at 43% of the amount that a disabled veteran receives. So a disabled veteran,
Oh,
okay, so a disabled veteran gets $3,621.95 every month.
Mhm.
if you're 100%, yes.
If you're 100% permanent total. So the widow right now receives 43%. That's $1,562 and change. Now, had Jay been a different type of federal employee,
Mhm.
I would receive 55%
Yeah.
as a pension plan. Well, 43% and 55%, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a widow who is, a lot of times if it's a disabled veteran, that widow a lot of times became the caregiver.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And as the caregiver, they gave up their career.
Yep.
As an active duty widow, I literally walked away from a very well-paying defense contractor job to
Right.
take care of my husband.
Yeah.
I got offered a job recently that was almost double what I was making at that point. But because I'm doing the advocacy, I had to walk away from it. Damn it. But so many widows have had to, it's military spouses, male, female, it doesn't matter. Because
Yeah.
the military does so often, because in whatever town we're in, most of the time there aren't good jobs. Most of the time the jobs have already been claimed by the retirees or other locals. It is really hard for spouses to find careers, good, well-paying careers.
I see. That's where I was coming up with solutions just now. Thinking of that is that comp and pen forms are actually done at home now with most VA employees. If you have a caregiver that is in that position, something like that, why not turn it over to the ones that are actually helping their spouses, give them full employment, give them income and things like that, and they would actually be more thorough because they know what it's. That would be something.
That gets into the caregiver program. If you want to talk to somebody about caregiver program with the VA, let me know. I got a list of people, but when I'm
Well, yeah, if you ever need anyone that wants to address that, because I see the problems with that, especially in these on veteran affairs, and it's something that's absolutely disturbing. So, what's the other legislation that you have?
Well, one moment. I wanted to park on something real quick. So you're saying you have to be 100% permanent total for 10 years before your spouse is eligible to receive your benefits out if you die from your
Service connected.
No, service connected is separate. You've got died active duty.
Yeah.
You've got died service connected as a veteran,
Mm-hmm.
or you've got full, this is going to sound horrible, general death as not service connected.
Yeah, I heard you mention something about 10 years, though. You have to be 10 years.
That's where the 10 years comes in. Is
All right.
if you've got a veteran who is permanent and total disabled, they have to have that designation for 10 years.
Before the spouse can receive benefits because of that cause of death.
No, it's any cause of death that is not service connected.
Connected.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that.
All right.
So,
we've got anything that's service connected, it's an automatic.
Okay.
Anything that's not service connected, they had to have been a permanent and total 100% disability veteran for 10 years in order to qualify.
All right. So I think that's kind of a bit ridiculous because I think that's a way of getting out of paying spousal benefits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's
I had a neighbor who lived behind me in Tennessee who her husband was out less than 3 years. He was 100% permanent total. He died of pancreatic cancer, and the VA told her to go pound sand.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have veterans getting, up to 80 and 90, a lot more frequently nowadays. But getting to that 100%, there's just this barrier.
Right, and that's because we've reports of 70% of claims actually being handled, and how many veterans are dying because of this mishandling of claims.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big issue to be handled. But moving on, what was the second legislation that you had?
Well, that's actually all part of the same. One's in the House and one's in the Senate. It's the bill is actually caring for survivors, and it is HR 1083, and the Senate version is Senate 414.
All right. Well, we will call our congressmen and our senators who and go ahead and get that started for us. And we'll go ahead and we have a huge network here down south in Texas. We'll go ahead and get the word out to spread that around.
Yes, we will.
Yes, please.
Tori, I have to. It has been by far, you're probably one of my favorite guests I've ever had on my show. Truly.
Just wait until we start getting into Ferry's doctrine and all the other issues that I'm fighting.
I would really like to invite you back so we can talk about that. And we are having a medical freedom rally, and this sounds something that's a part of that. And I would, if you would like to come out and be a part of that in Houston, I would more than happy love you there, because it's all the medical freedom fighters, and they have started into veteran affairs. And I would love to hook you up with a lot of those people as well.
Okay.
So we would like to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your evening with us tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's been a pleasure for us, and well, an honor, I should say.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Please feel free to reach out to us anytime if you have any breaking news or anything that you need to share. We'll definitely
Will do.
help.
And I just wanted to say I am willing to sit down with any elected official, any veteran, any organization, just to sit down and hash some of this out.
Find solutions.
Come up with solutions.
Exactly. And that's what we're about here at the Logbook, because we do we get in front of our legislators completely. Like we have Morgan Luttrell again on Monday. We have Lizzie Fletcher, which will be a lot of fun. And then I do know that we're going in for Wesley Hunt very soon.
Absolutely. Yes.
And we're very active also with Ted Cruz's office. So we'll get in there and we'll get in his office and help push your legislation for sure.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, before we leave here today, we like to just run through some events that are coming up. And right now, we have not right now, but on April 3rd, we have the Morgan Luttrell Town Hall at the Bowery House and Gardens in Katy, Texas. If you're in the greater Houston area and you like to talk to your congressman, the Texas District 8, come on down to the Bowery House and Gardens and you can see Morgan Luttrell yourself. And I got to tell you, his town halls are great. There's no crap about him. You raise your hand, he'll pick you out.
We can meet and greet April 4th at noon at Honor Cafe in Conroe, Texas. Come out, veterans. There's going to be lots of things going on. Get you a meal and network within the North Houston area veteran community. And Boots and Heroes Resource Fair in Spring Branch, free FW 8970 at 5. This is a resource, I believe.
Mental health. If you're looking for work, that's some really good stuff. Freedom Fest on the 15th of April at 10 a.m. Shenandoah Park.
This is a medical freedom rally. We have some amazing speakers, including Sarah Lindley Bailey, on everybody with the Texas freedom fighters. So come out, have a good time, bring as we learn about medical freedom in the state of Texas and federally. And
if you're down to the Boots and Heroes dinner and dance on April 2nd of 6 p.m. at VFW Post 8790 in Houston, Texas.
And in the 29th of April, the Children of Camp Lejeune water poisoning rally in Jackson, North Carolina. Please come show your support and tell your stories so the government will hear you.
Then last but not least, on the 20th of May, we have Pet Fest in Garber, Oklahoma at 10 a.m.
Yes, come out, get you a bite to eat, mingle with your fellow veterans in Oklahoma. So we would like to thank you again, our viewers, for joining us tonight. We'd like to give a great shout out and thank you to Miss Tori Seals, who we hope to have on again. And we would like to say God bless and good night.